This is Bryce.
This is Jonathan.
And this is Tim. And welcome back to the Average Reviews podcast. We hope everyone had a fantastic holiday season, whether you were decking the halls, feasting with family and friends, or just enjoying some well-deserved time off. As always, we're thrilled to have you here with us, and today we're capping off the year with a very special episode. This week, we're diving into Robert Eggers' long-awaited Nosferatu, his first remake and a stunning reimagining of one of the most important films in cinematic history. Now, Nosferatu isn't just another vampire story. It's a cornerstone of the horror genre and is one of the earliest examples of how cinema could turn folklore into something truly timeless. The original, directed by F.W. Murnau in 1922. The original Nosferatu was an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Stoker's widow even sued over the rights, leading to a court order to destroy the film. But like its titular creature, Nosferatu refused to die. It survived, became a classic, and cemented its place in the history books as a pioneer of both German Expressionism and horror as a visual art form. Eggers, of course, isn't one to simply recreate what came before. His Nosferatu is as much a tribute to Murnau's original as it is a fresh and haunting vision inspired by the same source material, Stoker's iconic novel. Eggers brings his signature flair for historical authenticity, pulling not only from the Gothic pages of Dracula, but also from the dark corners of European folklore that birthed the vampire myth. The result is a movie that feels like a living nightmare, atmospheric, meticulously crafted, and dripping with dread. So in this episode, we're going to explore the legacy of that original Nosferatu, discuss how Eggers incorporates its visual language into his film while still making it undeniably his own. And we're going to break down how he weaves Stoker's narrative and folklore into a chilling new tapestry. We'll be diving deep into the film through categories like script, music, editing, and more, because celebrating how we all see movies differently is what this podcast is all about. But before we get started, shameless self-plug, I'm thrilled to remind you that my book, The Harvest of Briarville, will be releasing in January. So It's a chilling tale full of suspense and small towns and some rural horror, perfect for fans of horror with a touch of heart. So get excited for that. Now, grab your blanket, maybe a clove of garlic, and settle in. It's going to be a bloody good discussion. So,
Yeah.
into those categories, we kick off each one with the story and the plot. So, who's seen the original?
I've only seen clips of the original. I haven't actually seen the whole thing, so I can't really speak to the original work.
Okay.
I think I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I think I just got busy, and I was just like, it's kind of hard to watch, so I just stopped watching.
It is. I've seen it twice, both times with different music, because it's a silent film, and
Right.
So depending on which version you catch, I'm not sure there's an official music that goes with it, but the music definitely does enhance it. It's an iconic film. I definitely recommend watching it, but it's an hour and a half silent movie. So it is
Only if you love movie history
Yes.
should you watch it. If you're just a casual movie watcher and
it's pretty tough to just sit through if you're a casual goer. Definitely.
It is kind of
But
tough.
loving horror. I don't really like vampires as a storytelling device, except I love Bram Stoker's book, Dracula. I'm not so much of the Anne Rice in Interview with a Vampire. I'm not so much, definitely not Twilight. I didn't even like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Not my thing. Couldn't finish that movie. So, but I've always loved Nosferatu, and it probably has more to do with the visual style of that movie from the 20s. It's incredible.
The Gothic feel, isn't it?
Yes, I've loved that.
I knew it.
So that being said, I love what Eggers did with the story in this film. He definitely took from that original Nosferatu, that bones, the structure, that's all there. And yeah, that's also based on Bram Stoker's novel. So, but it's kind of changed. And I liked what he did with this one of bringing in a little bit more of that German folklore. So we especially see that in that gypsy village. So we see that early in that gypsy village when it's not Jonathan. What's his name?
Thomas?
The husband's name. Thomas. Isn't it Jonathan in the Dracula novel?
Yeah, something. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like Jonathan Harker.
So, yes. So Thomas is the stand-in for Jonathan in the novel, much like Willem Dafoe's character is the stand-in for Van Helsing.
Yeah,
So,
that was one thing that really got me was like the difference in the character set. And I actually really appreciated that and how it drives the story versus, what you'd see in what's typical in a lot of other vampire movies or anything that is sticking to the Dracula story itself. Like you said, it's got the bare bones structure of all of that, but the way that they changed a lot of stuff in here and like the way the characters portrayed, I think they did a great job on that for this and in trying to make it a remake, but something original at the same time.
Yeah. I agree. There's so much to talk about in this movie, and I'm sure we're going to bring it up at multiple points. But the way he incorporated the various histories of Dracula into this version, I loved, and I'm seeing it be pretty controversial on social media right now, is his mustache. Orlok's mustache. I am seeing some people love it, some people hate it. What I love about it, even though like it kind of, at first I was like, oh, he's got a mustache. How does an undead being have a mustache? But then I'm like, I don't care because Bram Stoker's novel has a mustache. In Bram Stoker's novel, he's described as having a longer white mustache. But also, Orlok looked like Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, I got that feeling out of it too.
And every image of Vlad the Impaler has this thick brown mustache. So I was like, first of all, this is the first time I've seen kind of that Vlad the Impaler inspiration, even into Orlok's costume. And I was like, I'm here for that element of the story. I love it. The only thing that I wasn't sure how I felt about it, I don't hate it. As with most of Eggers' movies, I don't love them the first time. They grow on me with repeated watches. I pick up more and more and realize the genius. He doesn't just make a movie. He makes a piece of art. And so with time comes appreciation. So I wasn't sure how I felt about Lily Rose Depp's character and her relationship with Orlok. So I wasn't quite sure it was clear. And I think that's a bit on purpose, the idea kind of blending the message of when she breaks down and he is my shame, he is my regret, come back. So I think it's intentionally vague, but I think that also left the ending a little bit intentionally not quite satisfactory to me. So outside of that, I love what it did. And I think, like I said, with more watches, I'm going to appreciate it more and pick up on more. Having just seen it the one time, that's all I can say for now. But I loved the new and original elements that he added to Nosferatu that were from the folklore and Stoker's novel, and bringing that more into the story. Loved it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tragedy in this, a lot of like heartbreak for a lot of characters. But the way that it was all constructed for the story and how it played out was really great for the story. Like it was a bit lacking and anticlimactic at that end when it all finally comes to a head and finishes. But sometimes that's just how it is in a story. You know, not every moment's going to be amazing and super impactful. Sometimes it's better to have it as kind of more of a simplistic kind of thing going on than some grand, flashy, big ending kind of deal. You know, sometimes the tragedy of it is enough. I think, you know.
Yeah. Bryce, you have thoughts?
Yeah. I thought the story overall was just a good payoff all around, honestly. And I mean, I'll probably talk about it more in the script and direction overall. But I was talking to Megan about it when we walked out of the theater, and 2.5 hour movie overall. For Megan, she doesn't like movies that long. She kind of has trouble sitting through them and whatnot. But she did make a funny comment that she said, like, going into this with the story, like, even though it was a long movie, it felt like everything had a purpose in the story. It never felt like there was any filler or anything like that. Like, the story from beginning to end just felt full. Like, we were on just this entire journey with this couple, and the way they interwove the other characters in that story to make it feel almost natural. And you kind of got a sense of the relationships. You almost felt the relationships in a lot of them. And the way they introduce all these new characters, even like midway through the story, and it doesn't feel like jarring at all. The story was just clean. Like, I don't have a lot to say about it, but I can say, like, it was just a clean story. I really appreciate the, just a story of, like, love. Like, it's all, you could say this is a Valentine's Day movie if you want. A lot of love going on in general.
You can also say it's a Christmas movie because they're standing in front of, they're standing in front of a Christmas tree at one point.
Yep,
it's
exactly.
decorated with candles, and she tells Lily Rose Depp's character, like, my kids are getting ready for Christmas celebration or whatever, but that's it. Right. Those are the only mentions.
Yeah, exactly. So, Christmas movie, hands down. We've officially made it true. It was funny. I told my boss earlier this week that my Christmas movie I was going to be watching was this one. He's like, "What's that?" Like, you wouldn't like it. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really, like, rich story about love. It was really interesting. Tim, you pointed out a great scene towards the end where she talks about Nosferatu being her shame, and that was a great scene. We'll talk about it later, I'm sure, as well. But going into, so I'll just weigh in. The ending for me, it's been an interesting thing to watch over the last, I'd say, like 5 to 6 years or so. It feels like, at least for me, we've either seen movies where the ending is so ambitious that it just flops and it feels off, or it's so, like, simple and plain and makes so much sense that it's almost boring in a sense. And it's funny that you say that, because I was just talking with Megan about that too, about how a lot more TV shows and movies seem to be doing these simple endings that may not be, like you said, John, huge and flashy, but it's just like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, that's pretty simple. And, like, that, I get how we got here. There's nothing really huge to complain about. So I can understand how it can be underwhelming, but honestly, you could kind of see it coming a mile away. I think it's everything leading up to the ending that feels like it paid off. Like I said, no scene is wasted at any point. No character interaction is wasted. It is kind of spelled out towards the third part of the movie, where it's starting to hint at, okay, she's the one that can stop this whole thing. And yeah, the story was just really nice. It was a really nice story about love. I loved all the characters and how they're interwoven, and especially the relationship between Nosferatu and Ellen throughout the whole movie, and then Ellen's relationship with Thomas throughout the whole movie, and how that dynamic worked all together, and just a story about love, shame, and eventually just sacrifice at the end of all of it.
So, mentioning the love, shame, sacrifice, spoiler alerts,
sorry, I thought we'd do spoilers now.
Oh, we do, but usually not when it's still in theaters. But that's okay.
Shame.
It's okay.
There's definitely love in
this is a
some
remake.
shame.
You know how
love.
It ends.
Yes, because I'm going to talk about the ending anyways.
Yes, you will.
So I'm curious. This is what I want rewatches. I watched this in theater, and I was thinking, like, if I was still single, this is a movie that I'd be back for tomorrow to watch again, because seeing it on the screen was that much of an experience. Like, I loved it. My wife watches a movie one time in her life and she's good for years. I would rewatch it. But I was curious about the shame. And so I think there's a deeper meaning here, and I think it's different for everybody what you're going to take away from it. But that's what I want to rewatch and see more of those elements, because she specifically says that Orlok is her shame. When she was younger and lonely, she reached out for Orlok, not necessarily knowing it was him, but reached out for that companionship. And now it follows her and haunts her. And that's clearly symbolism for something more. And I'm curious, like, what is that? What's deeper here? What is that deeper story here? How does it affect the marriage more, hanging on to that shame? You know, I thought it was brilliant. And like I said earlier, I think it was intentionally vague so that people will take different things away from it. I think one of my not necessarily disappointments, but again, I'll appreciate it more on rewatches, I'm sure, was that in the end, I took it as she succumbs to her shame to save her husband. And so that is where I want to dive into that story a little bit more about what Orlok is representing. Because there's also, she talks about her melancholy, her depression, and he also could represent that side of her. And so this movie's saying a lot. On the surface, it's a vampire movie, but there's a lot going on in the subtext that makes it that much better to me. So I think I have to change my score on it.
What was your score? I don't even think I heard.
Oh yeah, we didn't say any scores.
No, we didn't say them. I gave it a 4 because I said I didn't like the lack of resolution or the ambiguity to the resolution. Ambiguity
is probably the better word.
Yes. I didn't really like that much of it, but I don't need it. In hindsight, the movie was great. And being able to have a discussion about what it could be saying in itself is a successful piece of art. That's what art should do, is drive conversation and drive inspiration. So
yeah.
I was a 4. I think I gotta come up to a 5.
See, I was on the verge of it. I scored it a 4 ultimately. I was close to going 5, but considering some of the bare bones aspects of it that are, taken from the other iterations to make this, and then like kind of how that somewhat disappointment of the ending a little bit there, even though it was still pretty good. I was really just right on the verge of going 5, but I think 4 is pretty solid in this for me on this one.
Fair.
Yep. I personally went 5. I do think that the story overall is good through and through. I don't see many plot holes. I personally don't mind ambiguity or even certain loose ends where it's a little bit more left up for interpretation. I don't mind that. I personally view the ending as just a full circle moment for her, facing her quote unquote shame. And again, sacrificing for her husband and the greater good. When her husband at the very beginning was doing all the sacrificing, that's why he went on this whole trip. And at the end, she ends up being the one who actually sacrifices for him. I think a lot of it is left up for interpretation, but I'm okay with a little bit of ambiguity. I agree that some of the shame stuff is a little bit more up in the air of like, it's her shame, but like what happened with her and her father again? It's like there's a little stuff in there I think is left up for the imagination and isn't fully explained, and I'm okay with it for the most part because the rest of the story does tie up the actual loose ends that need to be tied up for me to make the story make sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can use that to go right into talking about the character.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Themselves.
So. Yeah. With the amount of cast that we have in this story, there's a lot of different arcs.
There's so many characters.
There's so many arcs in here, and God, some of it's really bizarre, some of it's awesome, some of it's kind of sad. But yeah, this is a great section to really, really dig in.
Who do we talk about first?
Oh, geez. Well, let's just start with Ellen, since she's kind of like the main
She's a focal point
protagonist in
totally.
the thing. So, from what I got from it, Ellen from a young age lost her mother, I guess, and then just her father, and in that loneliness was reaching out, trying to find something to connect with, dealing with their so-called melancholy and her depression as a child. Somehow being like with Willem Dafoe saying later in the film, her being of special blood or some such, allowed her to reach out and make this connection with Orlok spiritually in a way. Mm-hmm. And so like with that connection, you see in the early parts of the movie where she as a child is walking out into the garden, out in the moonlight, and the stark contrast of the blacks and grays and white light and everything, just the setting of it. Beautiful. But you see her out there in her convulsions and everything, and that connection with Orlok. And then you hear her retelling later about her situation when she's talking about her shame to Thomas when they get super twisted. She's definitely got a lot going on there. And she's got a lot of trauma and a lot of issues going on growing up. And then the people around her seeing that she's having this and how that affects her and how everybody perceives her, as she continues to grow up until she meets Thomas, and that's when she kind of starts to balance out because she found some real love instead of this dark side of herself that she's hidden away after years of treatment and this and that. And people, side-eyeing her all crazy, just because she seems like she's the nut house. It's like, so she's already got a lot going on there. And then when we finally jump into everything and story starts moving, then, the introduction of everybody and seeing who they are at the start of all this, and then seeing how they're changed up to the end of the film for those who survive, ultimately with Ellen, man, she's like just this major catalyst caught in between everything that everyone seems to be swept up in what's going on with her, but seeing her as like, she's trying to fight through all this, waiting for Thomas to come back from Transylvania, from Orlok's castle, and how she just like is losing it. And with Orlok and that bond strengthening to see how more twisted she gets, crazy. And Thomas's friends are looking after her. Friedrich, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. Isn't he supposed to be like Craven or something in a?
Yeah, he's Craven right now. He's in two movies at the box office. Only one of them's going to make him any money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was in Kick-Ass also. Yeah, Kick-Ass.
Yeah,
Kick-Ass too.
he was Kick-Ass.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's also he's in Bullet Train more recently.
Oh, that was a good one.
And what was the other one I mentioned, Bryce?
Pretty sure he's going to be in the 24 Years Later movie.
Yeah,
okay.
He's in
mistaken. I could be wrong.
28 years.
20. I thought it was 24 years.
It was, because it was 28 days later. Then it was
28 days later, 28 years later.
28 years. That's my bad. Yeah.
And then that movie actually looked really good. We got a trailer for that before.
That's on the list. Don't worry.
And I don't like zombie movies that much, but that one looked good.
Yeah, he is in that movie. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sidetracked there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with Ellen, seeing how twisted she gets while Thomas is gone, how she kind of comes back once Thomas gets back from his ordeal, and how things just kind of get really weirder and weirder as Orlok gets closer and closer to Vipsburg, or where it's called. I think that's within town, Vipsburg or something like that.
It's a fictional town, but
is it? Oh, it's fictional town. Okay, it's not a real one. But yeah, you see her transformation of everything that she goes through, and then finally being the hero at the end through self-sacrifice because of her love for Thomas and not wanting Orlok to destroy him by that third night. So you see her go through quite a bit, and it's pretty amazing to see her come to that realization and that acceptance of like, this is what I have to do, and then seeing that resolve, which is crazy because in between all that, you get that one scene where she's telling Thomas about all of this stuff and her shame and the breakdown and how twisted they get. You see how like she turns. It's almost like she's got like this bipolar switch where she gets super twisted at Thomas and she starts convulsing, do weird stuff. And then she says that one part where like she's like twisting her tongue out. I thought she was going to bite her tongue off. Like legit.
I did too, actually. I
was like waiting for it. She's going to bite. She's going to bite. She's going to bite. She's going to bite her tongue off. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
It was almost demonic possession. Like the way we see demonic possession in films, she acted like that multiple points, like Orlok was possessing her. It was something new for a vampire movie for me, because we've always had vampire legend is that they can influence you and kind of hypnotize you. And I've never seen it quite like that, where it's more of a possession influence than a hypnotized follow the leader. So I appreciated that as a new take on it. I love that.
Well, I felt it was more like a repressed dark side that is being unleashed as he comes closer and their connection, starts having more of a stronger effect. But it could be that too. I mean, who knows? Yeah. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it.
Yep.
Because she was talking about how this is her shame, this is her regret, and all this other stuff. And it's these things that she has locked away and repressed in order to seem normal, in order to love Thomas and try and have a normal life.
And one of the things I love about it, that it's so subtle. It's so subtle because it's not mentioned. It's just like if you watch the movie, it's there, is that she confesses all of this, and that it's really like beginning of third act scene where she's talking about Orlok is her fault and her husband does not turn away. And I loved that, like Bryce was saying, at its core, there's this love story. And I love that, like, she is saying everything is falling apart around her because of a choice she made as an adolescent, as a child. And her husband says, we're going to get through this together. And I'm like, man, he doesn't walk away. He doesn't throw up his hands and be like, well, then I'm washing my hands of you. He is determined to stick it out. And I like, that is an incredible little message that it's not shoving down the throat. It's just, that's how it is. He doesn't, he's hurt. He's scared, but he is there. And I love that aspect of the story. And then we also get to see kind of I don't want to say the inverse of that, because that's not the case. But Aaron Taylor Johnson and his wife, their family quite literally falls apart.
Yeah.
The kids are dead. The wife dies. And it's some of the more tragic and horrifying stuff of the film is what happens to his family.
Some of the darkest parts of the film, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to dig into him because he, I think, had one of the hardest arcs in the film.
Oh,
yeah.
One of the most painful.
He was one of the backbones, I would argue, of the entire story.
Oh,
definitely. Because while Ellen's husband is gone, this guy, was he the brother?
No, he's Thomas's friend. He's his best friend.
Best friend, yeah.
And that makes him incredible because he's, Ellen and Thomas are struggling and he's allowing them to live there. And Thomas has that opportunity to make the future for them. That turns out to be a total scam, all of it, for Orlok to get close. But while he is gone and Ellen starts doing these convulsions and having these nightmares and losing her sanity to everybody there, he takes care of her.
That's a damn good friend.
Yes, as if she was his own family. And he says multiple times throughout the movie, at my expense, I will spare no expense. Make sure she gets what she needs. And at every turn, he is following the advice of the experts that he turns to. He is doing whatever he can to take care of his friend's wife.
Yep.
And it's a tremendous display of friendship. But then you have that moment when Ellen turns on him at the end. That was heartbreaking and fantastic. Just the, you tied me to a bed, and he's like, I thought I was doing what was best.
Yep.
And it's beautiful. And then what happens to him is awful.
That I hated that for him so much because I liked him as a character, and I hated what happened and what ran down on their family. It's just so brutal, man. He goes through all of this trying to be the best he can be to try and help them. Even when Anna is telling him, out of love for her friend Ellen, please do this. And he's like, look, I've done so much. I can't talk about her anymore. Can we please do something else? And he's trying. He's struggling so hard to do the right thing and waiting for Thomas to get back. And even trying to help them once Thomas returns, everything. And then to the point where he has to cast them out to go back to their own place in order to get his own house in order because of how much trouble it has caused. Yeah. It's been so tumultuous. And then finally getting to this point where, Orlok is threatening Ellen, or not Ellen, but her friend Anna and her family if Ellen doesn't give in to Orlok. That whole pressure. And then Friedrich trying to fight it the whole way. And then, God, I hate it so much when Orlok told him to stay asleep. And so children start screaming. He's not waking up. Anna has to take the gun from him and run in there to see what she can do. And seeing both of her children, bloom, that
was the most shocking part of the film.
Yeah. And it tore Friedrich up so bad. He went through so much just trying to be a good person to help them. Yes. And then to lose his children, to lose his wife, and the baby that she was pregnant, their little boy that they were going to have. You can see when they're all in the carriage trying to coordinate what they're going to do to go take Orlok down. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm not myself. And he clearly can't cope with what's going on.
Right.
And through everything, he joins his wife in their little tomb. And this is where it gets dark and gross. You can see on his face, the plague is setting in. Yeah. That he doesn't have long. He's going to die. And so he picks his dead wife up, starts making out with her. And then when Thomas and the doctors catch up to him at the cemetery, you find him dead, laid on top of her corpse with her legs spread. Yeah. So there's some dark notes of necrophilia in there as his last parting moments out of love for his wife, which really twisted. And God, I hated that for his arc.
I think that also goes to like the plague, and there's argument to be made here that the plague is Orlok. Orlok is infesting.
It's a plague vampire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, it's not just the plague, it's Orlok's plague. But I think that also, like, his brain's affected at that point. Mm-hmm. Like, he is not rational thinking. He is trauma plague brain reaction.
Broken.
And it is heartbreaking. There's this display in this film that I didn't think about watching it, but now as we're talking about it, and I'm like, this film showed incredible friendships at every turn. Mm-hmm. Devotion to people and friends. Even it's a heartbreaking scene again when Ellen asks Emma Corrin's character,
Anna.
Mm-hmm. When she asks, like, can I sleep with you tonight? And just because she's so scared, doesn't want to be alone. It's just a beautiful moment of friendship that going through trial, it's awesome. And it's the kind of thing I can't tell you the last time I saw a horror movie, let alone a movie, that really dug into bonds like this, whether it's the marriage bond, the family bond, friendship bond. I can't tell you the last time I saw it portrayed this way.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
First one that comes to mind that I can think of.
It's been a while.
A horror movie, basically.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw that.
No.
But yeah, it's character arcs in this are fantastic.
So here's another one. Thomas's boss, Herr Knock, from the real estate agency. This guy at the beginning seems like just an unassuming boss. He's happy for Thomas that he's got his woman, he's married, and then you come to find out that Herr Knock is a twisted little occultist. He's a naughty little boy with his diagrams on his office floor, covered up with rugs, and his little altar in his cabinet. And you see him slowly deteriorate little more and more and more into his insanity as a servant of Orlok. Like he's got this twisted little Igor kind of thing going on when you see him running around when they find him, and how he just seems to go full blown crazy when they finally put him in that room in the basement of the asylum of the hospital. and seeing how more twisted he gets, and then how that guy, like how he ended up like biting a dude's throat out to escape when he's turned on his side, going off and thinking that he's going to get this big boon from Orlok to be something special. And then finally, when they're going for Orlok at the end in the mansion that he bought there, and they open the coffin and they find Herr Nock there instead of Orlok. And they said, fuck it, stake the shit out of him. That dude got his just desserts. So that was an arc I was supremely happy about, to see that dude get taken out viciously. I was like, yeah, you take that, bitch,
So I loved that portrayal of, if you've seen What We Do in the Shadows, they talk about the vampire's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that portrayal of, he's basically Orlok's familiar. He's doing Orlok's bidding for him to help the vampire. And I don't remember, I think the last time I read Dracula was high school. I don't remember how much the familiars have to do with the original legend, but it's referenced multiple times in this film, because when they go to the gypsy camp, when Thomas is at the gypsy camp, they kill a familiar of Orlok. That's what that scene is. So that's a familiar. What's his face? He's a familiar of Orlok. So I thought that was really well done in making it not just like a blubbering servant, but basically losing his sanity, and just a fantastic way to show the influence of Orlok on another character. And yeah, I was definitely like, that first scene when Thomas is, I've got this guy, he likes old buildings, he wants to buy this one, you got to go meet him. I'm like, this is all way too casual and chill. And I was like, oh, that's why it's a setup. It's a setup. So that makes sense.
Let's see. Then doctors. You got Willem Dafoe and Ralph Ineson for Dr. Willem Sievers and Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz.
Ralph Ineson is Egger's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
All movies. Every movie.
Is he in every one of them?
Not The Lighthouse.
Not Lighthouse, because that just had 2 people in it.
Dude, I'm sorry, I would not watch The Lighthouse again. I mean, it was very artistic, but that movie was just too fucking weird, man.
I totally agree.
Robert Pattinson trying to rub one out to like a little bone-carved mermaid and stuff on. Dude,
hey, listen, don't knock it till you try it, okay? Don't be judging out here.
We got some
Cthulhu throw your judgment
Lighthouse
around
monster.
here.
Oh, man.
I tend to forget how sexual that movie is. But man, that's one of those that's like, that more than any other Eggers movie is the one that haunts me to this day.
I regret watching that. Ugh.
The Witch is fantastic. The Northman plays out like
it's the most metal movie you will ever watch.
It's like
really? I haven't seen those.
It is so
Northman
good.
is like a heavy metal music video the entire time.
Really?
It's fantastic.
Great.
It made me dive into like some Swedish metal pretty hard. And then it's great. But then The Lighthouse is the one that like lives in the back of my brain and just peeks out every now and then. It's like, remember that movie that messed you up? Yeah.
It was so weird and intense. God.
Oh, but that was the one that I started. We'll get into it on direction. Remind me of Lighthouse, and then we get to the direction. I gave the character arcs a 5 because each of them had such clear roles, great arcs, whether it's great as in tragic or great as in victorious, because the argument could be made that Nicholas Holt's character, Thomas, he loses his wife, but at the end he comes out of it alive. He faced Orlok and he stood by his wife's side. He was bitten by the vampire and saved.
Yep.
And comes out with his life. And most of the people in that movie did not. So there's that little bit of positivity there. So I was a 5 on character arcs.
Okay, I went with 4 on the arc. I was kind of with Willem Dafoe. I was hoping for more with Willem Dafoe, man. Like I really thought with him being that eccentric doctor, that's helping them hunt vampires, that there would be more going on with him on that. And there was no real kind of arc for him that went anywhere. He was just still the weird old doctor, eccentric guy that he was when you first met him, and nothing really happened with him.
Yeah, Jonathan,
he just lit some shit on fire and gave conjecture about stuff.
To be fair, I gave it a 4, and then while we were talking, I changed it to a 5 because I was like, "Yeah, it's good."
You coward!
No, I'm just being honest. I'm being honest because there are some things that I really like. When we were talking about the bonds of friendship and marriage, I was like, "Yeah, this movie did that for me." But
interesting.
His character, I got the impression, and I don't know if it was clear or not. It could have been, and I'm just an idiot. That he set up the ending. When he's burning that down, I'm like, this dude is off his rocker. He's lost his mind. I don't think he lost his mind. I think he misled almost everybody the entire time because he knew the only way to properly end it was Ellen and Orlok together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you see that picture from his book, from the occultist book that he gets from Herr Knock. You see that little drawing there of the vampire on top of the woman, the rays of light. And that's like that foreshadowing that tells you what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that I actually thought that was genius, the way it can be malicious, maybe a little bit evil to inspire hope. Like, hey, we have this chance. Let's go do that, knowing what's happening away from him is the real solution. But I thought that was very clever. And I think it did make me question his loyalties the whole time. Even though he's doing the right thing, it's kind of that, does the ends justify the mean? Or could he have just been like, no, Thomas, the only solution is your wife's going to die getting it on with this Orlok. Like that's it. That's how this ends. Or was he correct to go about misleading them? I don't know.
They had to go there anyway.
I just thought it was clever.
They still had to go to the mansion, even though Orlok's not there, because they still had to destroy the soil.
They had to
that way he would have nothing to return to sustain himself. So without the soil, that's still part of the plan. They're just at different odds of it from what they thought they were going to be doing because of that misdirection from the doctor.
He just left. It was a white lie because he just left out a very important element. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Bryce, what were you on?
I gave it a 5 also. I thought all character arcs, both small and big, all were good. Some of them that are weaker are intertwined, like I forget Frederick and his wife, Anna. Yeah, like Anna kind of has a little bit of a weaker arc in general, but I think she's more of like a supporting character in the overarching arc of the family as a whole. And so I didn't want to be too harsh, I guess, in that aspect of it. So I tried to be fair, and that some of these arcs are intertwined with each other, and it's more of a bigger picture than it is a single character. Like looking at the Harding family as like one character instead of just, the individual people and Frederick, Anna, and the daughters, etc. So yeah, I have no quarrels with any character. I genuinely enjoyed almost every single character from this movie, and all, like you said, served their purpose well and made the movie better because of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording, and I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencaster's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you are thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. So let's dive into the next category.
So the music and sound design for this one, this was a tough one for me because I almost, again, I'm just coming out again. I almost gave it a 4 because I look for it, and I say it just about every episode. I look for that iconic Jaws theme. You know, I'm looking for that recognizable moment in music. I didn't so much have that as I had fantastic music when it came in. Was it good? I was like, I kind of want this on vinyl because it was a haunting, almost historic, like appropriate music for 1800s German mount. It was great and haunting. But what pushed me over the edge was the sound design.
Yes.
Man, when he is on top of, and I was talking to our buddy Chris, who's been on the podcast a couple times. He did the Ring episode with Bryce and I. He did 13 Nights of Halloween with Jonathan and I. He was going to try to make it today, but he's on the road because he enjoyed the movie as well. But we were talking about like how Dracula always kind of has this sexual undercurrent. And man, when Dracula was on top of these victims, like writhing as he sucked their blood.
The slurp as his slurp. Like back arches.
Yes.
God,
yes,
that was
exactly
squelching.
Yeah. It was, that first time it happened was like goosebumps. And I can get, there's going to be those people who are like, I thought it was hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, well, you're a loser. Get out of here. Like, it got me. I'm like, that is a physical being sucking the life out of another being. And that sound was insane. That was so good. Also, just the vast, this was another movie that used silence extremely well. The kind of the way, I don't even know how to describe the way, like the castle felt like a different kind of silence. Like we had the silence when they're in the rooms with Ellen and like the camera is doing its slow pan thing and it's kind of built for tension. And then you have the silence in the castle that just felt, I don't even know how Eggers did it, but it felt soul sucking. Like you are in that castle and you are cut off from everything. The only thing that exists is the room that you are in with Orlok doing his vanishing act. Like it was awesome. I loved in that pathway in when the trees are closing in and it's just quiet and the snow is falling. Loved it. So I was a 4 on the music, and then I just had to take a second and be like, music and sound design is put together because we lump it together because this movie doesn't have a lot of music. The music that it has is excellent. Not necessarily like iconic and memorable, but excellent. But what this movie does have is fantastic sound design. So that's when I went, this is a 5 in this category.
Hell yes. Hell yes. I was 5 all the way on this, particularly because of the sound design. The music itself, was great, and it seems like it was kind of orchestrated with instruments for the time to kind of give it that sense of realistic depth to it, being 1834 Germany and all that. And like the stuff that you hear with the musicianship and like type of music that they're playing at the Gypsy Village when Thomas comes to that inn to stay for the night. The music, the way it's placed and the way it's constructed, I think was really it's well placed, well timed in the use of it. But like you were saying, that the silence, like in the castle, it's an empty, desolate lifelessness that you're quote unquote hearing at the castle, and it's like all those points leading up to the castle as Thomas is traveling, and you see him after like everyone's disappeared and his horse is gone and he's walking, like even that shot, like just the nature sounds and everything that you're catching from him walking up and everything, aside from the squelching sounds, all of the stuff that they were doing with sound placement, especially when Thomas is coming up in the woods in that crossroads where he stops at the middle of the crossroads and there's just so quiet. And then you finally start hearing that build up of the horse-drawn carriages coming up. And it doesn't really quite sound like it at first, but then the sound kind of changes and it builds as the carriage gets closer and closer and closer until you get to that point where he's just standing there like an idiot in the middle of the road when there's a carriage coming at him. Like, who the hell does that? Just out of the way. But yeah, when they finally stop and rear up in the sound and that fear, the terror, he's just like, oh. And then there's the carriage sideways. Like it did some weird like Tokyo drift action to turn sideways all of a sudden. I don't know. But then there's the sound after the fact when he's in the carriage and they're going to the castle and they get closer, and those horses, it sounds like they're screaming and not just making regular horse sounds. So like the blend of sound that they had in that part of it was fantastic. I thought that was a really nice effect for that horses, and it's kind of like a death scream kind of carriage thing. So that and the wolves that were chasing around trying to get after him, that was kind of cool too. But just like even at that part where Thomas is trying to find a way out of the castle and goes down into that depth and finds Orlok's what's it called? Box, the
casket.
Thing. Yeah, the casket. Yeah, there you go. That worked. When he finds that, even when he opens it and he's like grabs the bar to try and kill him, like the crunchiness as he jumps out, the creaking of the body and everything, with even those sound effects when you see him pop up out of his casket with his crusty vampire dick hanging out, and all that weird grossness, just they did such a great job with the sound and all of this. Just I loved it, man. I was like, this is top notch on sound effects for me.
All right, so I gave it a 4 out of 5.
What?
I know.
Oh, you've been getting on us.
Dare you?
Yeah,
Tim, I'm always right, so back off.
yeah.
No, I will agree. I do think that the sound design was incredibly well done overall. The sound effects for Nosferatu, and even the moments of silence and then cranking it back up again, to get the jump scare, which even the jump scares were handled really well, I would say, very tastefully, if you will. I will say one of my favorite parts of it, and this could go into the sound design, was the first jump scare when he does uncover him in the casket, and he's clearly going to try to kill him. It's like, okay, well, we all know the jump scare is coming at this point, but the one thing I loved about this, I mentioned this to Megan, was that when he went to swing and he grabbed his hand, you didn't get the jump scare right away. He grabs his hand, the camera then cuts to his face and then gives you the jump scare, almost as if to actually initiate how a human would actually react to that, whereas your brain doesn't register it right away. Instead, the scare comes after the fact. You look up and realize, oh crap, he's awake. Like, I don't know, maybe that was just something I'm geeking out way too much over, but I noticed that a few times in this movie. I like that delayed reaction that gives your brain time to like process, oh crap, and realize this is like really bad kind of thing. I don't know, maybe that's a nothing burger and that was just me. But other than that, sound was really good. The music was solid overall. The music absolutely enhances the movie and the sequences. Specifically, it was the one section with the hand going over the city. That was just a haunting moment. It was great. I loved it. But to go back to what Tim was talking about earlier, it's about iconic, music. Like, is this a Jaws? Is this a Halloween? And that's kind of what stumped me in going back to a 4 instead of a 5 was just, there's nothing iconic about the sound or the music that like stood out to me that I haven't seen from Robert already in his movies. And that's not to say that the sound and music wasn't great in all of his movies. I've liked all of his movies, but there's nothing from the music or sound perspective that makes it stand out like a Jaws or a Halloween. What stands out to me is the actual story in itself, his commitment to whatever he's actually making, not necessarily the sound and music. So while the sound and music is going to probably be great no matter what he does, it's not quite crossing into that realm of this music and sound will haunt me for the rest of my days. And like whenever you bring it up, that's the first thing that comes to mind. That's not what happens when you talk about The Witch. That's not what happens when you talk about The Lighthouse or The Northman. This will be the same thing for Nosferatu. So it will be a strong 4, but I can't quite give it a 5 because of that reason.
Okay.
Fair.
Like I said, I'm always right.
So the editing and special effects on this movie. Now, this is an interesting one because I've seen, since watching the movie, I started to read stuff online, and I shouldn't do that because I think there's a niche online of people who just exist to hate everything.
Yes.
Bunch of chodes.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of people criticize the editing in this film. And that wasn't really the only thing that stood out to me while I was watching it were the couple times it cut to black. That was it. And that's even if you don't really care for it, that's the director's choice.
Right.
Yeah, like it doesn't mean it was bad editing. It means you didn't care for the choice of that. So I had no qualms about the editing. And I think the special effects of some of the other things I've seen about the editing as far as story construction, I had no problem with that. And especially, I think if you've seen the original, which this movie almost assumed that the viewer had, because it launches into it pretty quickly. So that beginning is a little bit rushed, is what I've seen people saying. I didn't think so, but again, that's because I'm familiar with the story. Most people are familiar with the Dracula story. So I didn't feel like it was rushed. I felt like it got us to where we needed to. But the special effects for scenes like you mentioned, that shadow of the hand reaching across the city.
That's one of my favorites.
I don't know.
Of him walking up the stairs like from the original.
Yep. The number of, I was going to get it more into that from direction, but
the shadow usage.
Yes, the shadow usage.
There's so much good shadow usage. That was one of the first things I noted at the start at the beginning of the film when I was starting to take my notes. I was like, "Oh, they're fucking doing this right."
And that's a clear nod. That to me was Eggers tipping his hat to Murnau's original.
Yep.
I mean, whether you like the original 102-year-old silent film Nosferatu or not, it defined what a horror movie should look like forever. I mean, I was going to say for decades, but that's not true because we just got a Nosferatu remake that uses the same ideas and shows that it is still effective today. And the Murnau version is also like the reason that terrified people then. I don't think the story itself, I don't think vampires are scary. I don't think that kind of horror doesn't stay with me at night. I think they're creepy. I think they're atmospheric, filled with dread, whatever. I'm not losing sleep over a vampire story, any of them. But what the original Nosferatu did, and the reason why it stuck with people, is it was one of the first like special effects films that was feature length. There's silent movies like Trip to the Moon. I don't know if it's Trip to the Moon.
I think it's something like that. That are fantastic special effects. They're incredible pieces of old art, but
Nosferatu took that up a level from like doing ghostly images materializing into frame, doing a lot of tricks that terrified people who were new to movies. The way they were able to do that terrified people. This movie doesn't have special effects tricks to throw at us. It's not like, hey, I'm going to do special effects that you've never seen before. It doesn't do that. It says, I'm going to do stuff really well. And like some of the stuff that stood out to me that I thought was fantastic was when Thomas first gets to the castle and we get these long continuous shots that Eggers is great at, but he'd do things where like we're looking at the table and like Thomas is right here and Orlok is right here, and we keep watching, and then Orlok like goes this way and the camera pans and he just materializes right next to the chair.
Yeah, he's like right next to him out of nowhere, pouring him a glass of wine. Like, Joe, that was a really quick. How did he get over there so fast? Around the camera. What?
Well, and there's no clear cut. It's beautiful.
Well, I was going to make the point because you were bringing up how people were split on this. I wonder if they were uncomfortable with the transition between the real life and dream sequences that were going on in the movie, which I was going to bring up whenever I talk about it. But I wonder if that's what was frustrating for some people, because the editing kind of was, I think, in a way supposed to confuse the audience the same way that I'm sure the characters themselves were confused of why are these things happening? This is very disjointed and this doesn't feel like it's based in reality. I wonder if that was the frustration from the editing perspective for some people.
That can be fair. I'm normally not a fan of dream sequences at all. I hate them because I normally don't think they serve a purpose whatsoever. It's like, hey, let's throw in some scares in this dream sequence. Or what notoriously bad was 50s musicals. Always had to, like, Singing in the Rain has an obscure dream sequence for some reason. We just watched White Christmas with my family over Christmas. That has an obscure dream sequence. I'm like, why do these need to exist?
Brotherhood of the Wolf. The dream sequence in that one, though, was kind of cool.
That one was one of the better ones.
That was a pretty nice dream sequence.
Nope, you got stumped. Your argument does not count anymore.
I'm going to say one of the better ones. I will say, like, the dream sequence in this didn't bother me at all, because the dream sequences in this I took as almost Orlok communicating.
Exactly. Right.
And that's why I was like, these serve a purpose. I was cool with that. So they were done really well. I love the use of shadows. I don't know if this goes into editing and special effects. The set design was insane. The set design, and that goes into Eggers. He's great at that.
I was going to say, that could be direction or editing and special effects.
Yes, direction.
Yeah, I was going to bring some of that.
I was going to say it in direction, but yeah, we have a lot to say about that too.
Yes, but damn, those sets were from the opening. I was like, that little office that he went to of his boss is just filled with knickknacks and things everywhere. And I'm like, that looks like it's existed for 50 years. It looks like it's been, the streets looked.
The building structures, the way like when the camera moves, you see how like the uneven angles of the buildings and old school architecture and everything.
Fantastic.
It seems like legit, it seems authentic for the time.
And it's one of those things that I'm going to put that in with here in this editing and special effects, because we've gotten really lazy in filmmaking with making our sets feel closed. Even, I mean, not to call out Disney, but to call out Disney, like Star Wars.
Idea.
Star Wars has gotten really, really bad about like, hey, this is a big sprawling city, but we're only going to show you this little soundstage.
This little janitor's closet in the temple that's in the middle of the city.
With no life happening outside of it whatsoever. And then in this, we get multiple shots outside of that city. We see the walls that surround that city. We see the expanse of the city. And then we come down to the streets and we see street level, and it never once felt like, oh, this is the soundstage. This is the lot that they built out back.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like an existing thing. It was great. And that's why that specifically is why I'm going to put it in with editing and special effects, because they made it feel real.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I like the special effects portion. The editing I had no issues with or complaints of any kind whatsoever. The special effects, though, I thought were great. Like just the makeup and work that they did for Orlok's body. And like some of the times where like you see like those back of the head shots in the dim light, you see the rotting desiccated skin and everything from his skull, his back and his spine and everything. Even when you're seeing him first feeding on Thomas and the way the body, like just the boniness and just how messed up it looks from this dead vampire, this unliving being who's been around for a long, long time, barely surviving.
This. I don't remember. I don't think Bryce has seen this movie. There were moments that his twisted, deformed body reminded me of Castle Freak.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I got that for sure.
It was better than Castle Freak, obviously, but it was
absolutely
that same thing. I read an interview with Eggers where the design for Orlok was one of the pivotal parts of the film.
Yeah.
Max Schreck's Orlok is iconic from the original, and they didn't want to just recreate that. So what he did was he based it on the folklore of they are undead beings. And so he kind of went with that kind of undead, almost zombie, but not quite look. And then the image of Vlad the Impaler, they used that as well. So they kind of married those two things to create this Orlok, and excellent. But
yeah, and even at the end where you see his dead body on top of Ellen, like when you finally see the full scope of him as being finally dead, and you see those shriveled, desiccated legs that are just so thin and knobby. And just messed up looking body, and this is one of those things where I was talking about earlier, where maybe it was better to be more simplistic than big and flashy, because a lot of other vampire films, when the vampire meets its end to sunlight, you've got this whole flame and explosion and burst of ash or who knows what else. You didn't get any of that here, and it's like that little picture you saw on the Cultist book, kind of that kind of foreshadowing of what's going to happen. It's that same scene laid out at the end from what you see in that little picture of just body, vampire on top, the ray is light in, boom, dead, and then, it just all looked really, really good. And then even before Orlok dies, when he's coming up off of Ellen's chest, you see the bits of skin and everything that kind of detaches and stretches out as he takes his mouth off of her chest, before going back in, and she's like, oh, more, the dude, like that was just gnarly looking and stringy, all of that, and then even I felt so bad because that first night of Orlok being there when Ellen's in bed with Anna, and Anna finally comes out of her sleep from that and finds Anna on the ground, rats feeding on, you see blood. I thought she had lost the baby for a sec there. I thought that was like, oh, she lost the baby because the rats would be biting and feeding on her and who knows what else.
I thought she was dead. I thought she was full on dead at that point.
Yeah, so did I at first until they were like, oh, there's a doctor. She's okay. I'm like, But man, God, that just kind of freaked me out. All the rats everywhere doing their thing. And a lot of the plague stuff that you're seeing on people, man. You didn't really get too much of the view of the plague action.
No, but you see like dogs.
You see more dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah. You see like dogs eating bodies in the street. That was just a nice little touch that I was like, man.
Yeah. So yeah, special effects and editing, man, I'm sitting at a 4 on that one. They didn't get too over the top with effects. They kind of kept it low key to kind of fit the tone of everything, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. You guys pretty much touched on everything I agree with. I was going to bring up Orlok's look and just the special effects for him. You cannot tell that's Bill Skarsgård. It's
no, not at all.
Crazy not at all. How good that was. And not to say that that's like a measurement necessarily for how it looks, but like just I could not tell that was him. And when the movie at first started, like I've seen the original movie, but like I don't really know Nosferatu, like the story as a whole. So like I kind of just went like, is that Nosferatu? He's got a mustache, and I'm not like I really was not in the loop on this movie and what they were gonna do with it. So like even when he first appeared on screen, I was just kind of like looking at it like, is that our dude?
Yeah.
And we'll also get into that on direction and acting as well, because I love
was
what
the
they
same
did
way.
with him. But yeah, his special effects look great. I had no problems with the editing. I actually really enjoyed the almost dazed and confused like takes that they did where, you know, Orlok was clearly using his powers over the humans and like confusing them with dream stuff. And then like he's like Thomas is dreaming 1 second and then it goes to the real world. He's just on top of him sucking his blood. It's like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you guys said, the stuff in the third part of the third part of the movie with all the shadows and just his presence like over the city. Even the boat sequence was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that part of just the guys start dropping down or dead and like it just kind of keeps coming back to it and it just gets worse and worse. Yeah, I'm not gonna beat the dead horse. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I thought it was superb editing and special effects all around.
Bryce, is this is it in focus?
You might watch the same show and movies as me, but I watched
Does that sound like you?
That is me. Thank you. Maybe now you all can understand how I view these movies and TV shows.
This is why we had to do this.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was a 5 on editing and special effects. Script, good God. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. One other than like it's a 5 because
It's a 5. I don't think you can make it anything less, honestly.
I can't give Eggers less than a 5 in just about any of his films when it comes to script because he writes with historical accuracy.
Well, I was going to say this goes right into the direction section where he is 100% in every movie dedicated to the environment and time period that he is writing for, which again, you can't give script less than a 5. I don't see how you could, honestly.
The amount of research that has to go into just making sure you're stating things correctly to be in whatever Germany.
Yep.
The only thing I noticed in this film is I almost expected it to be entirely in German because it's Eggers. I almost expected it to be in German.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised that it wasn't. However, they still acknowledge people as Er, you know, they still use the German surnames and so forth, without doing any cheesy accents or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the writing with historical accuracy, I also think that plays into why some people think the acting in this film, from what I saw online, was subpar. I heard complaints about Lily Rose Depp, and I was like, "You're an idiot."
So when you say, "Oh, no, dude, that's not going to stand," no,
because
that will not stand.
Let's be
That will
real.
not
well,
stand.
I think part of that is the script. When you're acting on an 1830s dialogue, it doesn't sound natural to today.
Exactly. It shouldn't
that's
feel
not how
natural.
we
Nothing about
talk.
what they're saying should feel natural. You should kind of be stumped a little bit mid-conversation because of the way they phrase something or go about it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, you shouldn't notice anything that would feel normal by today's standards.
Yeah. So like I automatically, that level of devotion to the script is a 5 for me. On top of that, this film had great lines. Willem Dafoe delivered the only chuckle that we got in our theater was, and by the way, mentioning theater, this was the most full I have seen a movie theater since Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, mine was full pretty much outside the front rows. And we had to pick front rows because the back rows were all taken up.
Yeah.
It was a pretty full theater for us too.
I got lucky. I got row E right in the middle, like right off center from screen. I got so lucky.
We don't get to pick our seats at our theater, and that drives me crazy. Because I order my tickets like 2 days in advance. So if I could pick a seat, I'd have the good one. But we got there and like it was full. We could sit up front or like the row of 2s on the side. And so we sat on a row of 2. But I haven't seen a movie theater. I went to the Batman on opening weekend and I was like one of 10 people. I'm trying to think of, we've gone to a couple Marvel shows. Not a lot of people show up for those anymore. This is probably the busiest, like there were families having to separate to find room in our theater. There were couples splitting. It was cool to see. But the only chuckle we got was when Willem Dafoe, his character was comic relief, all of it.
Really? You think so?
I thought so.
I mean,
thought
in a
he
movie
was,
that's
there's a
serious
little
and
bit of
dark, I don't
comedicness
know if I
to
would
it.
call it comedic relief, but definitely a tension breaker at times.
He wasn't joking.
Maybe twice.
Yes. He wasn't cracking jokes, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, but when he said, I've seen things that would make, was it Isaac Newton crawl back in his mother's womb?
Yeah. That was
a tough line. I was like, damn,
that was a good
okay.
one. I didn't laugh, but I was like, damn, this guy's seen some stuff.
We got some chuckles in our theater about that one.
Interesting.
But when she's having her breakdown about shame, that's some powerful writing. The biggest one, my favorite line, I'm having to look it up, so give me a second. So someone else, if they want to talk, when I find it, I'll let you know.
Orlok, man, like when that first night where he's talking to Anna in the dream when she's sleeping with, or Ellen when she's sleeping with Anna, like he's kind of going off is like, I am this and this, and I am blah, 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 blah. And he has this whole little like roll of dialogue. I can't remember specifics of it offhand, but man, he had like a good set of lines there. And one of the things I appreciate about the script is there's not a lot of like pointless dialogue.
Yes.
Everything was pretty pointed, and there was a purpose to it. You didn't just get a bunch of bullshit filler, and that's awesome. That makes me very happy. You know,
I really like the one of my favorite like sections with the script was definitely the end with Ellen and Albin when she's walking him up, and this is like right before she makes her sacrifice, basically, and they're just having. He had a really good line about for us to know for us to understand evil, we need to like know evil, something like that. I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, that's the line I was looking up.
That line specifically was.
Yes.
I feel like that line perfectly encapsulated a lot of like her arc as a whole and like what she was meant to do from the even like in some ways explain more of the shame aspect of the movie for me, at least, or just brought it a little bit more. Gave it a little bit more foundation than what it had up to that point for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get where you come from.
So that line is brilliant. That's why I had to look it up. The line is, I have wrestled with the devil as Jacob wrestled the angel in Peniel. And I tell you, if we are to tame darkness, we must first face that it exists.
Yes. Oh,
like,
there's a lot of biblical lines, like a lot of stuff that points back to the Bible and some of those aspects of just good and evil and understanding like your sin and whatnot.
The other one from Dafoe that was great was in that same conversation. We are not so enlightened as we are blinded by the gaseous light of science.
Yes. He has some good lines.
Probably the creepiest, best line that defines Orlok was when he was talking to Ellen and he says, I am an appetite, nothing more.
There we go. That's what I was trying to think of.
That was a good one too. Oh my gosh. There's some good lines in this one, guys.
Well, Ellen had a good one too. She was talking to Professor. She's like, Professor, my dreams grow darker. Tell me, does evil come from within us or beyond?
Yep.
It makes you think because Orlok being this outside influence of evil that she's connected with, but then she's only got that darker side of herself she hides away as well. Which is it coming from? Is it something that's always been there in her, or is something that was, instigated by him?
Yeah.
Tim, tell me why I thought of Batman versus Superman, Lex Luthor's line in that movie when I heard that line. Dude, like when he talks about devils coming from below us, no, they come from the skies. Like, I don't know, something about that just reminded me of that line. Like, that's kind of nice. I like that.
So with the latest Superman stuff online, I have been seeing people resurface Zack Snyder's verse, and
interesting. Now
I'm seeing a lot of there's a lot of hate, but there's also a lot of people like which is what I've always said, the Batman vs Superman extended cut was too smart for its time, and it's starting to get that on X. Like I'm seeing a lot of people talk about like the writing in that movie was actually really good. You just have to watch the director's cut. So are we unanimous fives on
it's
script?
Fives, right? Yeah. Let's move on.
Yes, it's fives.
Perfect.
Okay.
I was at a 4, but I changed my mind.
Thank you.
I'm going 5 on it.
Okay. So then we can go the script into the acting, because I kind of mentioned I think some of the issue I saw specifically somebody saying Lily Rose was horribly miscast. And I actually think she was excellent. And I think a lot of those issues are that 1800s dialogue. I think that's where you think she's bad, but she's not. She is acting much like I would expect that time period. It's beautiful. And I've seen somebody did laugh in our theater when she was like tearing her clothes during that breakdown. And I was like, you're an asshole.
Right. Like that. No, that's actually what they did. In fact, again, pointing back to the Bible, that is what they did in those moments is they would tear their clothes off. That is a very much a historical thing that they did. It's funny. Yeah, I get it, but
what's it called? It's prostrating yourself.
Yeah. Something like that.
Something like that. But it's that moment, just her haunted demeanor the entire film. I mean, we can talk about everybody. I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson in particular stood out in this film.
Yes,
and we talked about
absolutely
his protection of Ellen when it's not his responsibility, and the way he does that and his tragic end. I thought he was fantastic. Ralph Ineson is great. The one that I really like, yeah, I have zero complaints about any of the acting in this film. I actually think it's excellent.
Dude, it was full delivery, man.
Yeah,
it was full delivery on all parts, I think.
I don't see how you can look at a single one of these characters or actors and say, yeah, it just didn't hit it. I think, seriously, through and through, they were all great. Like, there's maybe like two or three I'll make, like, just say, like, they were exceptional. And there are people I want to talk about specifically, but, like, everyone did phenomenal work, honestly.
Yeah. The one I wanted to mention, we already mentioned, he doesn't even look like himself, but good God, yeah. Skarsgård.
Sweet Lord Almighty. This man is good. He is so good.
You did not think it was him at all. Like, he was full on in character on that to the max.
Yes.
No inkling that it was Bill Skarsgård. That was Count Orlok.
All right.
Full send. Like,
please tell me if I'm like off on this at all. Okay. We all know how freaking phenomenal Andy Serkis is as just a character actor in general. I think Bill Skarsgård is like the next closest thing to what we have in an Andy Serkis. Like, genuinely.
Yep.
And I think he's better. Wish we had more people like this because they are just, oh my gosh, it just blows my mind. His like Bill, he was also in 2 movies this year. One flopped and one was great. But
I think what was the Boy Kills World
remake?
Oh, God, dude, I wish we had done an episode on that. I kind of wish we had. Because I went out and saw it. I was super stoked. Yeah. There's so much I could say about that one. Holy crap.
Yeah.
There's so much I could say. But it's time. I know.
No, but seriously, like, I watched this movie and all I can think about is just like this it's not like Andy Serkis is a one of a kind dude. But like this specifically feels like just the Andy Serkis effect, like someone who actually goes into a role and it's just like he just embodies everything about this character. And again, all respect and praise for the original movie and what it is. This movie will be remembered more than that original one. It's going to be like a thing. The Thing Carpenter's remake. You think of that one. You don't think of the original one. And as the original Nosferatu, iconic imagery, iconic character. Skarsgård's Nosferatu is I'll get into it with the direction, but seriously, it was peak, honestly.
I thought you were describing Jared Leto.
Oh,
the way you describe somebody who gets
forgive me. Yeah, no, Jared Leto.
Character actors who get into their role.
Crazy, super accurate and great method acting.
No, there was nobody in this film that had bad delivery to me. I think they were all on point.
Yeah. Also, quick shout out to Nicholas Hoult. Yes. Let's talk about Nicholas Hoult. And I'll just say, because I'm not a Nicholas Hoult fan, The Menu was the first movie I saw him acting in where I was like, actually, he's kind of good. I kind of like his stuff. I've never liked him up to that point. This was the first movie where I was like, I feel like this man has grown into acting and like his skill. I think this was his like moment of like, nah, this dude's got it now. Like, he's a very talented actor.
This was the movie where I watched Nicholas Hoult and I go, this guy is a movie star.
Yes,
Honestly.
he has got his skill down and he nailed it. Huge praise to him.
Yep.
He absolutely killed it.
He played Tolkien in the Tolkien biopic, and that was a good movie. It's not great, but he was pretty good in that.
Yeah.
But we mentioned, so I read an interview with Skarsgård where everybody made a big deal about his It performance, which was fantastic, and that kind of got him niche, like for a while, the niche horror guy. But if you compare just recently his villain from John Wick 4 to his performance here, and the dude is talented.
Such a wide range.
Yes. But he did an interview when he was talking about this role of Orlok and how he wants a break from horror.
Yes.
Not because he didn't want that niche, but because he said Orlok was such an evil character that to inhabit the space and get into that character affected him on a level that he doesn't want to return to. And I can say he brought that to screen.
Yes.
He brought that to screen.
Oh my gosh.
Because while the movie's not scary, I wasn't scared. Okay, wow, you impressed us all. It's evil. Like Orlok felt evil, and it's impressive. And whatever he did with his voice, I almost brought that up in sound design.
Oh yeah.
His voice acting is as good as his character acting.
Was perfect. It was the perfect voice for this character.
Agreed.
So good. So, I mean, we're talking a lot about Orlok here, or about Skarsgård. I think this is the movie that Lily Rose Depp starts to be showing up in a lot more films.
Definitely. Totally
Dude,
agree.
she was super intense, and the way she delivered on her character, dude. Like even not even just the acting stuff, but like the body movement that went into a lot of it,
the
a lot of the stuff she was experiencing, man. Like she was rad, dude.
Yeah,
there's no denying that she was all over it.
She committed to the role 110%, and I'm thinking like, I don't know what I've seen her in. I do remember she was in Yoga Hosers from 2016.
Wait, she was in Yoga Hosers?
Yeah, it was her and Kevin Smith's daughter. Harley Quinn Smith.
Oh shit, that's right. Oh wow.
And I remember seeing that and I was like, this is not what I expected it to be. I guess I forgot she was in The Idol with The Weeknd.
She was in The Idol, and the most recent movie that is somewhat not really relevant, but Silent Night and Tusk were the big movies that she was in. So you could arguably say that outside of The Idol, maybe this is basically her debut.
Yeah, because the rest of it has been, I don't want to say indie, but it's certainly not been major release. I think this is the movie that she's not going to be a household name after this movie, but I think this is a movie that sends her on her way to becoming a household name.
She's on the map.
Oh yeah, she's going to get so many good roles after this.
Totally.
Absolutely. She's going to get a lot of work.
She was excellent, worth noted. Emma Corrin surprised me.
Yeah, she did good.
She was, because I think she understood her part. We already mentioned Aaron Taylor Johnson, Skarsgård. I mean, everybody. I think she understood her part. She didn't try to steal the scene from anybody. She was, in almost every scene, she was a complimentary character to somebody else.
Yep.
And she did an excellent job. And you compare her, because she was also in one of the biggest movies of the year. She was the villain in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yep.
And I struggled the whole time I'm watching this film. I'm like, why does she look familiar?
Yeah.
Who is that? Who is that? And then when the name popped up at the end, I was like, oh, she has hair in this one. Now
it's a little different, right? When they got some hair on their head.
Yeah. But I was impressed with her as well. So the acting in this is a 5.
Oh yeah, 5s all day, dude.
Oh yeah. Last shout out, Willem Dafoe, aging like fine wine. I love him more and more with every movie he's in. I don't care what it is. He is just a phenomenal actor. 5 out of 5. I'm with you guys.
My favorite for him though will always be Boondock Saints.
Yeah, no.
That's one of my favorite roles of him was in Boondock Saints, and that's just, and there was a firefight.
I haven't seen that movie in a very long time.
Oh man.
So now we're on to it. This feels like we could spend an hour on this one. So, but
As
the direction,
hour 30.
yeah,
yeah, direction time. Whee!
The direction, and we've mentioned a lot of it before.
Yeah.
So I'll try to abbreviate instead of pointing out the scenes that I like. I think Robert Eggers is one of the few, if not one of the last, hopefully not, but artists that is making movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is an artist first. Everything he does is a commitment to his vision, from the historical accuracy in the script to somebody I followed online who's a historian broke down. He's like, I'm not going to review the movie, but I'm going to talk about the historical accuracy in every scene of this movie, from the costume design to the historian said the men's overcoats in this movie are characters in themselves because they're just extravagant. And he talked about the use of Thomas and Ellen's wearing black was a sign of a middle-class family in 1830s Germany. And so the fact that they're wearing black clothing is not part of like the Gothic aesthetic. It is, they are middle class. They couldn't afford color. And that is like that attention to detail on top of, they went into the talk of Count Orlok's coat is exactly what a 1700s royalty would have been wearing in the Germany area, all of that. So the level of accuracy there is, that kind of commitment is something I see from an artist, not a studio filmmaker. You know, it is a commitment to the vision of the project that I greatly respect. And on top of that, you mentioned the final shot of Orlok laying on top of her. Looks like a painting. It looked like a painting. It's just a still shot from above. And I was like, that is art. That is beauty and tragedy and all of that in a single still image. And there are multiple images throughout this movie that I'm like, that looks like a painting. That looks like a piece of art. And the thing that I noticed, without going into too much, my gothic emo kid heart from high school was thrilled by this film. Like the atmosphere, the vibes were all there, and I ate it up. But the thing that I really appreciated in Eggers was, while this movie gets very dark, not just thematically, but visually, he balances that with sunshine. So a lot of times a director will get into the dark territory of a movie and it's just dark. And we never get out of that. But I noticed in this movie, we get dark and then we get some bright sunlight. And I'm like, thank you for balancing that which helps the aesthetic. So without talking about Eggers for an entire hour on his approach to this, because I could, it's a 5. I think he is an artist, first and foremost, and in everything he does. That's why it has me a little bit worried that he is rumored to be taking on a studio movie next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll find out.
They're saying he's either remaking The Labyrinth or doing a sequel to The Labyrinth.
Don't remake it. Just do a sequel.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make a remake, it better be like dark and gritty. Because a movie like that, I want to see it really twisted. If they're gonna do a remake.
But I'm also just like, just keep doing your thing.
Yeah,
man.
don't even do it.
Just leave Labyrinth alone.
Yeah,
Let it shine like it always has by itself out here.
Yep.
But yeah, with this, man, I really liked Eggers' use of those panning shots. You know, he such great use of those. Like I said earlier, when Thomas wakes up, everyone's gone from the little gypsy inn, whatever, and he's walking up towards the castle, and you see that long shot of him walking through the wilderness with trees in the backdrop and coming up, and then you see that bridge and that pan over, and then it kind of zooming in to see that altar with all the crosses that you see. They're there to kind of ward people away from crossing that bridge over into that territory, and just like when Thomas finally gets to the castle and he's coming in, and you see the camera just kind of angle up as he's going through the gateway, and you see like the top of the roof of everything when it's coming in, and then back to his face, and seeing like that look at his face, like his kind of loss at like be like, where am I? What is it? It's like, oh my gosh, it's just crazy. And then there's that scene where it's not even a long pan really. It's just kind of a moving shot where Thomas is following Orlok, and he's coming up that winding stair into the room with the fireplace.
Yeah.
Orlok, like, it's a short minute where like, okay, there's going to be Orlok. No, Orlok's gone. He's already vampired off space. He's like, oh, that's cool. That was really, I liked how that effect went, with that. And like we said earlier, with that pan around shot from the table at the fireplace where Orlok's over here with the paperwork, then all of a sudden he's over here on Thomas's side pouring him that glass of wine. Just those shots and that run and everything that he did with those, I thought was great. And then at Friedrich's house, when his wife is out there in the hallway, kind of looking around, and you see that shot pan around through that one hallway to where the staircase is. And you're waiting it's like you're waiting to see a shadow of someone or something, because you think Orlok's going to pop out nowhere, but nothing does. But then when it pans back to Anna, there's Ellen behind her. It's like, kind of a little bit of a jump scare kind of thing that kind of catches you. So I liked how they did that with those camera shots, man. I thought that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. All right, Bryce, I know you have something to say about Eggers as a director.
I have nothing to say, Tim. Why you make these assumptions?
Yeah, no words.
No. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not going to beat the dead horse. You guys have hit on a lot of good points here about Mr. Eggers and his visionary prowess, if you will, for movie making. I love all of his movies and how they look, and I just love. Again, I love how he's so like committed to the story. Like, I don't know, it just feels like there's so much love and passion put into it. And not just from him, obviously, from everyone who works for him, like a costume design, set pieces are put together, the actors themselves, all of it's great. The one thing that I want to talk about in the direction section was the route that they took with Orlok, basically, because again, this is all based off a silent film, so you do have just a silent film and then some folklore to go off of for this character.
There was a 70s remake that there are diehard fans of.
Interesting. I'd never heard of it. So trash. Anyway. Anyway, but like there was a lot of things they could have done, and a lot of things that could have this whole thing could have gone sideways. The one thing that just really stood out to me, I was watching another person who reviewed this movie. He made this point, I agree with him wholeheartedly, is just that this character in this movie, going back to the comment he made of I am an appetite and nothing more, like this man is just pure evil, like incarnate. And it reminded me so much of when The Witch came out, and watching that movie, like that movie just irks me to my core. It is just such an uncomfortable movie to watch and go through, as this family is isolated in the middle of nowhere with a witch that is basically haunting them. And then there's even debate of, is it even a witch, or is it just the isolation and them going crazy and mad over each other? And like eventually they just all kill each other and they all die. Like, Orlok is just... he is just so evil, and you feel it in this movie. And a lot of that has to do with, one, Bill Skarsgård and his phenomenal acting chops. Another of that has to do with just the writing that was given to him, the script itself, and lines such as like, I'm just an appetite, nothing more. Mm-hmm. Like, I really appreciated how much effort that they put into making, like you said, Tim, vampires aren't inherently scary. But in this movie, it's funny how they, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they ever called him a vampire. What did they call him? A demon.
I think
did they call him a vampire?
Willem Dafoe referred to him as the vampire.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's brought up one time, but
Yep.
over and
But
over
that's
again, they call him a demon.
Yep.
And I feel like having that mindset, and that's probably what Eggers like intentionally meant to do, was we could just make this a vampire movie, whatever. Maybe he wasn't thinking that way, but I view that as in, you know what? Let's actually make this something scary, something that will irk these people to their core and actually touch a fear in someone like the witch does at the end of the day. And this isn't a vampire. This is a demon. Like, this is a creature that you don't want to run into, that, biblically speaking, is scarier than anything you'll ever come across on this earth. Like, I feel like that specifically going that direction with Orlok was just higher thinking in general. Cloud Nine, like, that was the best way they could have gone about this character. And from the beginning to the end of that movie, he is just an ever present being, like, and that's represented with even the shots of his hand, like the shadow going over the city and whatnot. Like, you just feel his presence. And again, Bill Skarsgård turning in a wonderful performance to even further that idea of just like, damn, dude, this dude is a killer, and he is just straight evil. There's nothing redeemable about this guy, and I love when they can do that with a bad guy character. I guess that's in the simplest of terms.
Yeah, it's Eggers set out saying he wanted to make vampires scary again.
Yes,
so definitely
that's a perfect way to put it.
Definitely wanted to shed the sparkle skinned Twilight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think he succeeded.
Totally.
So we were unanimous 5s on direction. Jonathan, what were you?
See, I was a 4 on direction.
Okay.
I'm never good with direction. I've said it millions of times, and I'll say it again.
I'll let it happen. So for the it factor for this movie is an interesting one because it's still so early in its release. It hasn't even been out a week yet at the time we're recording this. But I have to say, based on early reactions, it's a 4 for me because it is being widely discussed. I'm seeing a lot of information online. I'm seeing a lot of people praise it. I'm also seeing a lot of people who didn't enjoy it. But either way, there's conversation and buzz about this film. So that all adds to its it factor. Will it be the iconic status of the original? Time will tell. So I don't know. But for me, it's a 4 because I'm seeing quite a bit of talk about it. And like I said, it was the busiest I have seen a theater in a long time. And honestly, we went to the theater and the theater itself was busier than I have ever seen it since I moved here. But that's like Sonic 3 is out. Families are seeing that. They're seeing Mufasa. And I was like, Nosferatu is going to be empty. No, that was a full theater. So I was surprised by that. So it's a 4.
My little sister can't handle the scary stuff. Otherwise, I would have seen that on Christmas Day with her. So we saw Moana 2 instead. Very sweet movie. Very good. But for this, though, considering the origins and film history and how much I enjoyed it, and just the original Nosferatu and what that's done for developing other vampire stories over the years in film. Personally, I think this is going to be a 5. I think this is going to be very impactful because this is kind of bringing a whole new light to the Nosferatu story. It will bring more recognition to the original movie that others might not be aware of, and may expose people to a little more depth in the whole idea of like vampire movie culture. So I think 5 is a nice hefty drop on that for me.
All right. I hope.
Yeah, I was literally just looking through IBM's like horror movies that came out this year to remind myself of to make sure I'm not like over exaggerating when I say there was a lot of bad horror movies that came out, but there are some good ones.
There's some great ones. Yeah, Smile 2 didn't do it for me.
I can't wait to see that. I still need to see it, and I'm excited. I hope it lands. But
it's a well-made movie, but I think I prefer the first.
First one is really good, but yeah. I landed on a 4 too. I think this is kind of one of those movies where it should be a 5, but I just don't think enough people probably know what Nosferatu is. Like my boss, who had no clue what it is, but he's a big movie guy. And then Robert Eggers, as great of a director he is, I think he's made too many niche artsy movie. If you want to say artsy, The Lighthouse is is artsy. The Witch is not quite as artsy, but it's still pretty like under the radar when it comes to movies. And The Northman was his first big one, like his first mainstream movie. But even that one had horrendous marketing that went with it. So it really didn't do that well, or at least as good as it should have done. This is, I think, once we get past this one, you're probably going to start people will start probably recognizing him a little bit more outside of like the intense like movie spaces and those who like really pay attention to that kind of stuff. So I think the movie will do really well overall. It will probably be the highest grossing horror movie, I would assume, this year, based on what I'm seeing, at least on this list.
I expect it to be, yeah.
If you want to give it, the only argument I could probably make for it being a 5 is that I do think that this Nosferatu will be hailed as like the Nosferatu movie you watch. And they're like, oh yeah, but there was like an original one it was based off of. You should go check that out. It's a silent movie. So like, if you're going to argue for a 5, I do think that is a fair argument to make, that this one will be the main Nosferatu that everyone refers to when they talk about the movie moving forward.
I think that's fair. I could see this reshaping the future of vampire movies, and I'm cool with that.
Oh, totally.
So
I'm here for that.
More vampire movies follow this, please. Mm-hmm. So on to the final category of how entertained were you?
Very much entertained. Mm-hmm. Very, very much entertained.
Lots of fun.
Even though I went to the theater by myself, this is a movie that I still really, really, really enjoyed. Even seeing the people next to me, because it was a full theater there too. There's a couple with me over here and a couple on this side of me over here, and like watching their reactions to stuff. And I got a big kick out of that. You know, I really enjoyed being able to enjoy their scare, the jump scare scenes and stuff. You know, I thought it was just, that's cool. And like, I wanted to go and watch it again. I wanted to watch it again last night, but I had other places to be and stuff to do. I might see about taking someone on a date to go see it again. But this movie, I'm definitely going to recommend to a lot of people. I've already been talking to people at work since I watched it last week, and been like, yo, you guys need to go see this film. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really going to get around in the way I think it should. So I'm 10 all day on this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I use 10 as like, would I turn around and watch it again immediately? And like I said, I'm sitting there going, if I was single, I would come back again tomorrow to watch this movie again. Mm-hmm. I want to see it again. And part of that is, I told you, the ambiguity of the ending kind of left me a little bit meh. I loved it, but I was still like, I want more from it. But it's the kind of, I want more as in like, I need to see it again because I bet it's there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't pick up on it. It's a kind of movie that like, I think with repeat watches, I'll grow to just appreciate more. So I had to go with my 10 is, would I turn around and watch it again? I wanted to. So yeah, it was a 10 for me. I was almost a 9 because I was like, it's a little long. But I was also like, I loved being in that world and in that movie. Mm-hmm. So, and the thing that I think is hard and people need to remember going into this movie is it's not a horror movie in the sense that like Paranormal Activity or The Conjuring or even, more recently Smile, anything like that. This is a horror movie in that it's just atmosphere of dread and evil. And it's not like, it doesn't really get under my skin as much as like some people might not want to sit through that because it is dark and it is heavy and it is ominous and it's a different kind of horror and it's beautiful. I loved it. So it was a 10.
I gave it a 9 out of 10. Listen, hear me out. Hear me out.
We know you're right.
Nice. One was the length of the movie. I did kind of feel the 2.5 hour. I've noticed this weird thing lately where I've almost had a weird appreciation for 1.5 to 2 hour movies now.
Dude,
like
I
don't
just
know
had
what
that
it is.
conversation the other
Like
day.
it just recently clicked for me. I just kind of I like these epics. They're good and stuff, but like
Yep.
I don't know. I came out
90
of like
minutes is great.
right. Yeah. 90 minutes is kind of hitting a lot better nowadays. I think it was mostly like coming out of the Zack Snyder era with his long movies and like just
4
being really
hours.
into that stuff. The Dune movies being another example. Like I like them, they're fun, and I'm glad I only get them so often. But I feel like the older I'm getting, the more I am starting to feel that 2.5 hours starting to like, ooh man, I love being in this.
Rewatchability.
It
Dude,
does
my
a little bit.
tailbone was getting sore by the end of the film. I was like,
Yeah,
man, this chair's
I was
not
gonna
comfortable
say.
anymore. Like, oh god.
Yes,
Yeah.
Kill Bill is a
Adjusted my
good
seat
example
so
too.
many times.
Yeah, so I say that very like comfortably, just like it's a little long, so I was getting a little uncomfortable, like just trying to get comfortable, but despite that, I enjoyed this movie through and through. And if it makes you feel better, I think I only gave 10 out of 10 this year to a movie for entertainment, and it was Dune 2. So you're up there in good company. Like it's not like you're that far behind. And honestly, you can't even compare these two movies. They were both like the best movies this year, hands down for me. So 9 out of 10 is I'm comfortable with that. And it could easily be 10.
All right.
Man, you said something that I want to.
This is one of the few that I've actually given a 10 for. I don't give a lot of 10s on entertainment.
Oh yeah, no. This movie will be on my bookshelf with The Witch and The Northman, which I just got for Christmas. So
Nice.
it will
nice.
be in my DVD collection.
I
I'll bookmark it. I'm going to watch that. Here.
Yeah.
I want a nice little steelbook version of it. That's what I need. I want to see. I'm just gonna check real quick. So Bryce, I can look at our system here.
I was gonna say we've done so many movies this year.
Jonathan, you were a 10 for Brotherhood of the Wolf,
Of course.
Nosferatu, and Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yes. I enjoyed the hell out of that one.
That's a fantastic film. Bryce, you were 10, Dune Part 2, Nefarious. That was last year.
I was gonna say
Oppenheimer
that
was
wasn't this year.
Yeah, that's it for this year. So I don't even want to.
Yeah,
see,
I don't hand out my 10s lightly.
To be fair, Black Christmas was a 10 for me. Invasion of the Body Snatchers 56. That's not right. No, Nosferatu was a 10. The Fly from 83 was a 10 for me. Bad Times at the El Royale. Not Deadly Manor. Can't Buy Me Love, really? Yeah, that was a 10.
Can't believe
Oppenheimer.
Ooh,
Scream
yeah.
6 was a 10. That's not this year. Okay, I'm off track.
I was gonna say you've gone way off track here.
I'm looking at the whole record here. All right, so back to our final thoughts. Final thoughts and final scores. Do you have your?
With the change that I made, I should be at a 46.
Okay.
1, 2.
I am at a 49. And
I'm working on it. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, darn maths.
I know.
Numbers and shit.
I have you at a 47, Bryce.
Plus, that sounds right. Yeah, 47. Yep.
Okay. And then Bryce's wife supplied hers at a 44. Nice. So that gets us an average of 46.5. So that would be about 4.5 stars, which I think that's a pretty fair representation of the film.
Yeah,
accurate.
Like much art, not everybody is going to appreciate it, but
totally, that's fair.
That doesn't diminish the quality of it. So that's where I'm at. Like I said, I think Eggers films have grown on me over the years. At first, I didn't really care for The Witch. The Lighthouse, I can't describe to you what The Lighthouse did to me.
That was just a bizarre
wife-
film, dude. God.
My wife and I watched it when we were dating, and it was one of those movies that we watched, and then we we're like,
That's not a date film.
No,
That's
we
not
were
a
like,
date
It's not a
film.
date film.
I watched like Full House for like an hour now. Like I just gotta watch something squeaky clean, and we did that. And then The Northman, I liked. It honestly wasn't my favorite of his movies, but all of them have grown on me over time. This movie was my favorite on first watch. Like this was the first one that I was like, my first watch of this one I like better than any of my others. So I'm hoping it continues to grow. Where The Northman was like a Viking heavy metal music video. Like it made me want to listen to Sleep Token real hard. It's just like put Sleep Token
See,
on.
and I'm excited to watch this movie because it sounds like it's up my
dude,
alley.
you're in for a
You're
ride.
Vikings and
I
metal,
think
like
you'll
shit,
love
bring it on,
I think
dude.
you'll love it.
He's gonna love it.
Yep. And then this one is like, this was like, I'm watching it going, this is like a gothic rock music video because it is just dripping in the imagery, the atmosphere. And I'm here for that. Like I'm coming back. I'm coming back. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results. Overall, sounds like we'd recommend this movie for a group setting, but
I would.
For sure.
I do think you got to know your audience.
True.
Not showing it to my mom and dad, that's for sure. But some other people, I would. So, any other final thoughts, guys?
Nah, I'm good. That was like 2
Going
hours
straight
of
for now.
talking about it. I hope
Yeah,
I got my thoughts out.
I did not expect 2 hours of talking about it, to be honest.
And that's just how we do.
Amen.
Okay. So, that was our holiday episode.
Yay!
Ooh, jazz hands.
Just a second. I'll edit this out.
What are you doing?
I'm organizing the outro.
Oh.
He's over there touching stuff.
Whoa, buddy. Hey, Jamie, can you pull up that video of the snake attacking that deer?
Yeah, I need an editor. Hey. Okay, so here we go, and I'll cut back in. So it sounds like that's a wrap on our holiday special and the end of another fantastic season of the Average Reviews podcast. We hope you enjoyed diving into Robert Eggers' Nosferatu with us. What a perfect way to cap off the year. As always, thank you for joining us on this journey through the weird, wonderful, and sometimes downright horrifying world of cinema. Now, here's something to look forward to. We will be kicking off season 3, January 14th, with a breakdown of one of the most beloved cult classics of all time, Clue. I'm so excited for that. From its witty script to its stellar cast and iconic multiple endings, it's a film that promises plenty to talk about. You won't want to miss it. January 14th. And don't forget, my book, The Harvest of Briarville, drops this January as well, just in time for that premiere episode. So you can find that on Amazon. So you'll want to check it out. And in the meantime, stay connected with us on Instagram, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform for all the latest updates. Until next season, keep celebrating movies in your own unique way and have a happy, safe, and spooky start to the new year.
We will see you next year.